Be with you in shortly.
Got my only prop.
She's leaving me, and I'm going to have to fake this.
Leaving you. I have a guest, and I'm leaving him. So happy half hour to everybody. We are here from the Museum of Broadcast Communication. My name is Susy Schultz. I'm the executive director there. And here we go. One of the artifacts that I did take with me into quarantine. Those NBC chimes telling us that we're back again talking with you, and very excited to be doing that. At least I am. Maybe it's just because I get to talk to people. I'm not sure. But the reason for this half hour is, one, we want to tell you a little bit about who the museum is and know a little bit more about our direction. We'd love you to become a member. We have a special membership going on right now. It's $49 for a year. We will have robust online stuff. We'll also probably be opening at some point, we believe, but you'll also be supporting curriculum that we are building about the great debates. That's why we've been discussing with Gini, a wonderful and amazing man who is also the retired professor of business ethics and former chair of the Department of Management at the Quinlan School of Business at Loyola University in Chicago. That's why we've been discussing presidential politics the last 3 weeks. I'm just going to set the stage for what this exhibit is really all about. And by the way, if you do that $49 membership, I did forget to say that it's $140 value, because we are going to send you a number of old-time radio shows that you probably haven't heard in a long time. Ones that we have licensed to, thanks to one of our board members, Carl Amari, and those will be yours, free to download. And those who appreciate old time radio, or those who maybe even don't know it, will actually enjoy most of these. So that's where we're going with the membership. But where we're going with the exhibit is the great debates. Our whole premise on this exhibit is that as the media, as broadcast media, whether it was radio, television, or digital, as it has evolved, it becomes the natural disruptor on all sorts of things. But nowhere is it really more evident than in the presidential debates that started in 1960. We're going to have a website, and we're going to have curriculum up as well for 8th through 12th graders. That's coming in the next couple of weeks. I'm very excited. I was looking at and editing some of the last pages today. It looks great. And what we've talked here about is we began at the beginning, we went to the middle, and now we're coming up here to the end, Gini. We are talking about the two candidates, presumptive candidates, Democratic and Republican, Democrat Joe Biden, as well as the president, Donald Trump.
And in fact, I think the debates now have become incredibly important in how we make decisions and who we make decisions with, decisions about. And perhaps even more so when Obama and Mrs. Clinton debated, and then Obama debated the senator from Utah, and now then Mr. Trump debating Mrs. Clinton. I think that was a game changer. Everyone didn't play fair in that, but that was a real game changer. And to give him his due, he played the role perfectly. He was the aggressive individual who outspoke and out-interrupted everyone there, and people paid attention to it.
And he is really, he's the synthesis of the disruption.
Yeah.
He really takes a system. He's a businessman. He's used to being top of the pyramid. You don't, I don't, I'm not courtly to you. It's not a political discourse.
Right.
In fact, I think, Fritz, we have the first clip that actually talks a little bit about this. This is Donald Trump in that first debate, or the second debate, rather, that he was doing, where he actually, his positioning was Mrs. Clinton.
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time. What I've seen is so bad. First of all, the media is so dishonest and so corrupt, and the pile-on is so amazing. The New York Times actually wrote an article about it that they don't even care. It's so dishonest, and they've poisoned the minds of the voters. But unfortunately for them, I think the voters are seeing through it. I think they're going to see through it. We'll find out on November 8th, but I think they're going to see through it.
But, sir,
if you look, excuse me, Chris, if you look at your voter rolls, you will see millions of people that are registered to vote, millions, this isn't coming from me, this is coming from Pew Report and other places, millions of people that are registered to vote that shouldn't be registered to vote. So let me just give you one other thing. So I talk about the corrupt media, I talk about the millions of people. Tell you one other thing. She shouldn't be allowed to run. She's guilty of a very, very serious crime. She should not be allowed to run. And just in that respect, I say it's rigged, because she should never have been allowed to run for the presidency based on what she did with emails and so many other things.
He who controls the mic controls the world. He's a very effective person in this. He is a salesperson. He's not going to give you a word edgewise, and he's going to make his agenda. And the repetition of simple superlatives is not because he's simple. That's rather brilliant. He keeps saying those words again and again and again as a tattoo that you apply to the other person. And how do you rejoin that? How do you rebut that? And you can't fight the same way. If it turns into if you'll excuse the phrase, a pissing match, that's going to change everything on both sides. And so this danger is, what we're talking about is, I think, very, very clever. Anyone who doesn't think Mr. Trump is clever is not paying attention. Very, very clever manipulation of what's going on. This person viscerally understands the power of the media.
And he is a television man. He's a television man. And what you have up against him, and this is why I think this clip is really kind of pertinent to when we're looking at Joe Biden, because what you have is Hillary Clinton, who was a senator. She was also a diplomat. Joe Biden, senator, also and they're used to this. Excuse me, will the learned gentleman from Connecticut speak? They're used to certain rules, and he doesn't. He doesn't bring
he doesn't care for rules. And I think we got to go one more step backwards. He's not just a television personality in that show. By the way, I think a Loyola student was one of the first winners on The Apprentice and went on to have a rather successful life, a young man in one of my classes. The reality is he was a salesman. He was what we would call a celebrity, a person who was known just because they're famous. And he played that role. That's what he did for 40 years in New York. He got loans, he got connections on that, and he applied that to the media. And now what you have with Mr. Biden is not someone who's Mr. Smoothie up there, not someone who always gets something perfectly accurate. And by the way, to defend him just slightly, in that first debate where he spoke up in the Democratic nominations, I think he was ill-prepared and not ready to go. But we have to remember.
I want you to hold that, because I think we have that clip.
Oh,
so,
good.
But I think we're going to go back to one more thing with Clinton versus Trump.
Okay.
So you kind of look at that.
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time. What I've seen is so bad. First of all, the media is so dishonest and so corrupt, and the pile-on is so amazing. The New York Times actually wrote an article about it that they don't even care.
If he wants to start, he can start.
There we go.
No, go ahead, Donald.
No, I'm a gentleman, Hillary. Go ahead.
Secretary Clinton?
Well, I think Donald was about to say he's going to solve it by repealing it and getting rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I'm going to fix it, because I agree with you. Premiums have gotten too high, co-pays, deductibles, prescription drug costs. And I've laid out a series of actions that we can take to try to get those costs down. But here's what I don't want people to forget when we're talking about reining in the costs, which has to be the highest priority of the next president. When the Affordable Care Act passed, it wasn't just that 20 million people got insurance who didn't have it before, but that in and of itself was a good thing. I meet these people all the time, and they tell me what a difference having that insurance meant to them and their families. But everybody else, the 170 million of us who get health insurance through our employers, got big benefits. Number one, insurance companies can't deny you coverage because of a pre-existing condition. Number two, no lifetime limits, which is a big deal if you have serious health problems. Number three, women can't be charged more than men for our health insurance, which is the way it used to be before the Affordable Care Act. Number four, if you're under 26 and your parents have a policy, you can be on that policy until the age of 26, something that didn't happen before.
Interviewing for a job, a very important job. Let me tell you what I've thought through A, B, C. The other gentleman, brilliantly, is scatterlogical. He just throws out, do you still cheat on your wife? How do you answer that question? And so he throws out things that can't be, there's no retort to it. He's not playing by the game. And the intimidation factor, I'm surprised every woman in America didn't write in on that. His prowling the stage, his frowning behind her. Brilliant,
so
but not appropriate.
And I know that that's the take on that, but I don't necessarily know if I have that take on it. Yes, it does seem that way, and he is a much bigger person, and he is, but he's doing the same thing he does during news conferences now.
Yeah.
Kind of sways back and forth. And I think what he's actually doing in there is he's staying in the shot. He's not getting away from the shot, because I really do think we dismiss how much of a television man he is. He's looking at all of this stuff, and so he's there. And yes, it's menacing. Definitely, and as a woman, that's what I saw first.
I don't really think that he's going to pounce on her, but the point is, he's interfering with your space. It's over talking your guest, and so but it's a tactic. It's not just he's a brute. He is doing this as a real tactic, a media tactic, and it has been very effective. Even now, when he's up there, when he's been up there every day, what's the COVID-19 people. He's the center of the stage. Why do we want to listen to him? We want to listen to the doctors, the medical people, et cetera, et cetera. But he knows how to command a space.
We actually have a Katie who's saying, do you think he was standing right there as a tactic to be distracting as well? And I bet it is. It's I'm back here. You can't forget me. And if I can make you nervous, I mean, if you've got somebody standing in front of you in a business deal, he's disruptive even in the business circle.
And which is right. And to go back to his. Talking to the media in that first shot, you guys are liars, you're doing this. When you make those kind of accusations, how do you respond to it? Do you say, now, Mr. Trump, that's not accurate. You mentioned 17 things here. Let me show you the counterpoints here. It's lost. It's a fact at that point. The point is, this is shock therapy. This is, what's his name? Help me, please. The gentleman in New York, the shock jock of choice. I'm having a senior moment. Howard Stern. And this is brilliant. I think
like Howard Stern. Howard Stern is the Radio Hall of Fame.
No. I like the new Howard Stern. I like the Howard Stern and the biography recently. Mm-hmm. But even if you don't like him, the man commands attention, commands the space, commands the interview.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why he is in the Radio Hall of Fame is because he was a disruptor. He changed industry. And that's the same thing here. This president, this politician is changing the whole political landscape. And you're right. If somebody, you can see journalists who are interviewing him that there's especially during those news conferences, it's very ineffective because they're expected to get a question asked and have it answered.
Right.
And shutting them down.
That's it. And again, I want to suggest that this is not my politics speaking. He's very effective at what he does. This is not an idiot savant. This is someone who doesn't necessarily think through in logical syllogisms all the time, but has figured out a way to be the biggest voice and the biggest person in the room. Now, physically, he is, in point of fact, but he's figured a way to be the center of attention, and he doesn't let that go. And that's what the media is about.
No, he doesn't let that go. So I think the next clip that we're talking about seeing is, I think we're going to be looking at Joe, but I could have my list wrong. So let's see what we see.
Okay.
With me, where I spend a lot of time, and you ask anybody in there whether or not the economic and foreign policy of this administration has made them better off in the last 8 years. And then ask them whether there's a single major initiative that John McCain differs with the president on taxes, on Iraq, on Afghanistan, on the whole question of how to help education, on the dealing with health care. Look, the people in my neighborhood, they get it. They get it, and they know they've been getting the short end of the stick. So walk with me in my neighborhood. Go back to my old neighborhood in Claymont, an old steel town, or go up to Scranton with me. These people know the middle class has gotten the short end. The wealthy have done very well. Corporate America has been rewarded some time. We change it. Barack Obama will change it.
Governor. Say it ain't so, Joe. There you go again, pointing backwards again, though. You prefaced your whole comment with the Bush administration. Now, doggone it, let's look ahead and tell Americans what we have to plan to do for them in the future.
She almost carried it off. Joe is a professional. That's a while ago, and that was in a real campaign. By the way, the real debates were Mr. McCain and President Obama. John McCain is a gentleman. John McCain is a real politician. John McCain I don't always agree with, but I remember interviewing a couple of times. And I said, Mr. Senator, is there anything you don't want me to bring up? He says, don't be silly. I'm a public person. You can ask me anything.
Yes.
Imagine, that's my job. But he handled it with dignity. And when that woman accused Mr. Obama of not being an American, so on and so forth, when he stopped and said, I'm sorry, I have to disagree with you. Mr. Obama is a good, decent human being. If he becomes president of the United States, we won't be endangered. Now, Joe's a politician's politician. And the young lady who was there is a feminist. I hate to say that, as many feminists said, we would like a skirt in the office, not that skirt. And we just didn't like her as a person necessarily, right?
Right.
That's what it was really about. It wasn't because she was a woman that she became this firebrand. But she tried to do what Mr. Trump was doing, but she didn't quite have it. Well,
she also, you've also got the Reagan-esque moment that she's not carrying off of, there you go again.
Oh, again, right.
And quite that. And she didn't have the gravitas to carry that. Right. Oh, you have also this folksy thing between the two, which is interesting because even though they're going at one another, you still have her kind of smiling at him and smiling at her. And so there's a different a civil discourse there, which is evolved and disrupted. But, I think let's go to the next one just real quick.
But I want to say real quickly, not toward the end. They wound up being pretty trashy at the end.
They did. Well, yes, you're right. Civility breaks down.
Yes.
So, but I think we have the next one, and I think that's in his first Democratic primary debate with Kamala Harris.
Do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America then?
No.
Do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Well, there was a failure of states to integrate public schools in America. I was part of the second class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Because your city council made that decision. It was a local decision.
So that's where the federal government must step in. That's why we have the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of all people.
I have supported the ERA from the very beginning when I ran
Vice President Biden, 30 seconds, because I want to bring other people into this.
I supported the ERA from the very beginning. I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years. We got to the place where we got 98 out of 98 votes in the United States Senate doing it. I've also argued very strongly that we, in fact, deal with the notion of denying people access to the ballot box. I agree that everybody, once they, in fact, they should. Anyway, my time's up. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Vice President.
Listen, this is a perfect example of she was loaded for bear. She went at him. Give her A++ on her presentation. And he had been quiet. And he wasn't quite ready. And he wasn't a gentleman. He was being a gentleman there. He backed down. Every time she kept going, instead of going in there, he backed down. He was not on his game that day. And I think that on any day, Mr. Obama, who I think is one of the best debaters I've ever seen, was terrible in that first debate against the senator from Utah, whose name I'm blanking on right now.
Mr. Romney.
Mr. Romney, yes.
Yeah, he was. And you're right. But he just seems very ill prepared. So there's a 12-year gap between those. And two clips that we just played. And he seems not only ill prepared for a career politician, it doesn't, he
didn't look smooth. He
knew that was coming. I mean, anybody who was watching politics knew that was coming. Somebody would get him. It was going to be the black-white racial justice type of question. There was no doubt it was coming. So what do? You prepare for the worst. You hope for the best.
Right. But I think he wasn't ready to speak that quickly. And I think her timing was perfect. Let's give her credit for that. Boom, 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 boom. She didn't give him a chance to breathe.
But the fact that also in those debates where everybody was speaking over everybody else, the fact that when the time comes, what does he do? Stops himself abruptly. That's the Senate discourse. The time is up.
That's right.
And now
he wasn't ready yet. And let's remember something. I think Joe was really nervous. Mr. Biden was really nervous, as if I really know. Really nervous. And people said, well, he's faulting, little senior moments here. They didn't want to bring that up to, little Reagan-esque moments. Mr. Biden has a horrible speech impediment. And to overcome a speech impediment, my father had a speech impediment. You've got to keep your chops going. You have to enunciate and be, your elocution has to be perfect for a long time. And when you don't speak a lot, boy, you're in a one down position. So I don't want to, just, if he had kept stumbling over the other things, I don't think he'd be in the position he's in right now. And I don't know what's going to happen if they debate. I think they'll debate on stage.
So, I mean, do you even think, so we're going to go to them in the pandemic right now.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say was, one, I would be surprised if we have one debate. I don't think we're going to have any more than that. Because I don't think that
So vulnerable.
The president already has almost a daily discourse, right?
Yeah.
He has that speech in front of everybody. Why would he need that?
Right.
Why would he give that ground up?
Right.
When you can just hack away at your opponent from a podium, why would you bring him up there?
No, you're right. And they both have to agree. And I think he cannot say, no, I don't want to debate him at all. But I think you're very wise right there from a media point of view. I could get the mic anytime I want. I don't want to give him the mic anytime he wants.
Exactly. So let's take a look at how they're communicating now as presumptive candidates, of course, and then, presumptive nominees, but candidates, of course, about the pandemic, which, of course, has flipped everything.
Yeah.
Update you on the next stage of this momentous medical initiative. It's called Operation Warp Speed. That means big and it means fast. A massive scientific, industrial, and logistical endeavor, unlike anything our country has seen since the Manhattan Project. You really could say that nobody's seen anything like we're doing, whether it's ventilators or testing. Nobody's seen anything like we're doing now within our country since the Second World War. Incredible. Its objective is to finish developing and then to manufacture and distribute a proven coronavirus vaccine as fast as possible. Again, we'd love to see if we could do it prior to the end of the year. We think we're going to have some very good results coming out very quickly. In addition, it will continue accelerating the development of diagnostics and breakthrough therapies. The great national project will bring together the best of American industry and innovation, the full resources of the United States government, and the excellence and precision of the United States military. We have the military totally involved. We're also working very strongly with other countries who are also have some great scientists, doctors, and we're all working very closely together, and they're viewing us as the leader, and we are the relationship with other countries on solving this problem has been incredible.
So that's what you were outlining, right?
Yeah.
He's
come in and he doesn't stop. And even though it's sometimes dips into being very, very ephemeral, and again, his superlatives are so, let me be vulgar, so déclassé. I mean, I'm trying. I'm trying to suggest that he really big. This is really big. This is a used car salesman. This is a wonderful deal. No one's ever done this before. You're never going to do anything like this again. Believe me, I'm going to keep talking to you. You're going to buy this car.
Well, and again, when you're talking about disruptor, if you are burdened by facts and getting everything right, this is not a political thing. It is, we've got about 10,000 incidents. He's up to about 10,000 lies that's been tracked on. And he goes back and forth, and he's very fluid with the facts. They even say that. So if you're not restrained by that, by knowing exactly what you're talking about.
Well, it's the whole argument of laws, and that we are a nation of laws, not individual men and women. The reality is the laws only work if everyone abides by the laws. Right. If no one abides by the law, if you get a judge making a decision and nothing happens, then that's the breakdown of the law. The first time a Supreme Court edict is not carried out, it means the end of the Supreme Court as we know it, and perhaps the beginning of the end of the law as we know it. And so I think that when you talk in these kind of superlatives, you're breaking the model. And I do think Mr. Biden has made terrible mistakes in the past, including some inadvertent plagiarism and overspeaking his point. And by the way, the thing that drives me crazy, he says one, then two. He does this list at every speech.
Right.
I think that there are two different combatants here. The gentleman, factician, Mr. Biden, and the salesman braggadocio on the other side of Mr. Trump. And Mr. Biden may lose to that. Just be overwhelmed by that.
Yeah, and again, I cannot stress enough, because I am head of the Museum of Broadcast Communications. So it's also this fluidity in TV, where the cameras are, how to deal with it, how to play. That becomes. We started our discussion with that in the 1960 debate.
Right.
How that trumped, excuse me, but not really. I had to. How that trumped Nixon, and I see that. There are no really. You don't do a lot of cameras as vice president. You do some, but not as much as president.
Right.
Don't do it in the Senate. We have one look here before we go on our chat about this is Biden and how he's communicating in this pandemic era.
Yeah.
It's limited.
Well, we did a lot to prepare, as you know, George. We set up an office a pandemic office within the White House. We expanded CDC in other countries so we could in fact, observe, see when things were coming, how things were moving. We put people in China. We did a whole lot of things, and they got a very detailed breakdown on this by a briefing to the Trump administration when we transitioned out of office. But the president dismantled almost all of that, and he drastically cut the budgets for the CDC. He drastically cut the budget for anyway. So he didn't follow through on any of what we suggested was a real problem. And it's going to continue to be a problem. We've got to learn lessons from this. We can do much better than being done now, and we can eventually get to the place where we can, these viruses, George, they have no borders. You can't build a wall. You can't have, people at the border trying to stop it. It's beyond that capacity. You have to know what's coming, where it's coming from, and how to deal with it.
Are watching podcasts like that. The podcast is flat. He's got the books behind him. He's got a great tie on. He always has good suits, by the way. They've done something to his hair so he doesn't look. And I'm not putting him down, but it is a cosmetic effect. Before the plugs were not working, he looked, kind of a jumble. Who's going to watch that? I mean, let's watch paint dry. The reality is, if that's on national TV,
he's very avuncular. He's at a point where we're talking about a pandemic that is killing people, and we're talking about the fact that time was wasted here. If you want to make that point, you have to. Let's do it. Yeah.
Obama did a job yesterday. We should talk about Obama next week. Just take that speech apart. Here's a former president of the United States who has gone out of his way to be silent for the last 3 years, now sitting up there carefully, cautiously offering warnings to the American public, right? But the empathy coming out of him, you wanted to reach it. I felt like my mother. I wanted to reach in and hug him. That there was something comfortable about him again. And I think what we have here are both men in their 70s, but one who has absorbed the tactics of slash and burn media usage, and the other who really believes that documented papers with good footnotes and a solid presentation will win the day.
I think what's interesting, though, is when you think about it, and when we talk about communications, teaching communications, and talk about it, you don't really, and as a journalist, I don't necessarily want to know about your process. I don't necessarily want to know about the policies, right? I want to know about the end result. This harkens back to me. Remember the moment where Romney was caught off tape talking? He was dissing some of Obama's followers, about 50% of them.
Yeah.
But what he said, if you continue to listen to that, was that we're almost done here. The time is telling us that. If you continue to listen to that, he said, these days you really can't sell things that are policy and programs. You have to be quick and short. I can do the white papers. It'll be on my website. I can do thoughtful books and things like that for people who want it. But if I'm on television and if I'm doing this, I need to be quick.
It's show business. Then it's show business. You go from politics to show business.
Okay, and this is show business. We are over here. I want to say before we leave, thank you. What a joy it is to talk to you. It's so fun.
It's been a pleasure.
And it has been wonderful to chat. If anybody wants to tune into Instagram on Friday and wants to go a different direction, Aileen Bishop and Olivia Jackson are amazing people at the museum. We'll be talking about real drama. They are going to be binge watching Nailed It, season 4 on Netflix. You can catch up with them Friday at 5:30 and discussing real life TV.
Okay.
Trash TV. And that's okay. We're happy to say it because it's fun to do it. So join us back here next week, 5:30 on Facebook for another happy half hour. And thank you so much, Al Gini.
Cheers. Out.